Rachel Zegler on the docket is she's an asshole. So she came out and took a large dump on half of the country, everyone who voted for Trump. So I attacked her, and then she came out and she said, I apologize. Like I went too far, but it wasn't sincere. And my team, my helpful team, pulled this thought from December 2023, in which, I mean, I would say she leans into her role as both victim and heroine.
You ever watch a movie crash and burn before it even hits theaters? Because that's exactly what happened here. We're talking about a $242 million Disney remake. Yeah, that much money, getting absolutely torched by its own lead actress before a single ticket was sold. And no, this isn't just another celebrity mess-up. This one turned into a full-blown disaster. We're talking online meltdowns, marketing chaos, a PR team running around like their hair's on fire, and fans ready to riot over a fairy tale. You won't believe how fast this thing unraveled, or how one offhand comment from Rachel Zegler managed to flip the internet upside down. So yeah, buckle up, because once you see how deep this rabbit hole goes, you're not gonna look at Disney or Snow White the same way again.
Listen.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her.
Oh my God.
And I can only hope
What does that mean?
that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
At first, it looked like a slam dunk. Disney announced Rachel Zegler would be the new face of Snow White, fresh off her breakout role in West Side Story, praised for her voice, her energy, the whole next big thing vibe. On paper, it made sense. She could sing, she could act, and she had that rising star shine Disney loves to sprinkle on their remakes. But then came the double take. Almost immediately, people started asking, wait, her? For Snow White? The classic pale-skinned princess with lips red as blood and skin white as snow?
You're crying on that stage.
When am I not crying in public? It's so upsetting.
Why were you crying?
Oh my gosh, I saw the well, we didn't even see.
Overwhelming.
We didn't even see, but
Fans were confused. Some were annoyed, and others flat out angry. Not because of her background, but because it didn't feel like Disney was honoring the original at all. The casting felt more like a PR stunt than a tribute, and that was just the beginning. Before the film even started production, the buzz went from excitement to skepticism. The pressure was on, and all eyes were locked on Rachel, not just to play Snow White, but to somehow justify this bold new version of the character. But what no one expected was that instead of easing concerns, Rachel would light the whole thing on fire.
I saw the logo and I went, that's my name, Snow White's up there, and I cried my eyes out.
What was it like seeing yourself for the first time in full Snow White drag?
I love that description, it's perfect.
It started small. Just a couple of interviews, some red carpet clips, nothing out of the ordinary. But then Rachel opened her mouth, and all hell broke loose. She called the original 1937 Snow White weird, outdated, and made it crystal clear that she wasn't a fan of the whole princess falls for the prince storyline. And sure, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but maybe don't publicly trash the exact film you were hired to reboot. Disney fans went into full meltdown mode. The internet lit up like it was the 4th of July. Meme pages exploded, fan accounts went on rants, and the hashtag number #NotMySnowWhite started trending.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
People weren't just annoyed, they were insulted. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Dismissive, snarky, like she was too cool for the fairy tale she was supposed to bring back to life. It didn't take long before the backlash snowballed. Casual fans turned into critics, former supporters hit unfollow, and Disney's PR team probably popping stress meds like Tic Tacs. And the worst part? Rachel didn't stop. She doubled down, made more jabs at the original, and kept talking like she had zero idea the House of Mouse was slowly catching fire behind her. But if you thought the backlash was bad already, the next part took things to a whole new level of chaos. At this point, Disney had a 5-alarm PR fire on their hands, and it was only getting hotter. Instead of building hype, their leading lady had turned the film into a public punching bag. And behind the scenes, pure panic. The studio started pulling back. Media appearances were quietly canceled. The Hollywood premiere got scaled down. Rumors started flying that internal execs were scrambling to figure out how they were going to spin this disaster before opening weekend. Then came Rachel's attempted apology tour. Suddenly, the same actress who'd been roasting the original film was popping up in interviews, voice trembling, eyes misty, talking about how much she loved Snow White, about how the character's superpower was her heart, about how much the story meant to her growing up.
We don't just sit around and say, yeah, we grew up watching this movie called Snow White, and all of a sudden you show up and we have to eliminate all the memories of these young girls who grew up wanting to have an experience like that?
The shift was so dramatic it felt like a bad script rewrite. Fans weren't buying it, not even a little. Comment sections lit up with, "This is damage control," "Too little too late," and the ever-popular, "She's just acting again." And as if things couldn't get more awkward, Disney kept pushing out trailers and posters like everything was fine. Like they hadn't just watched their own marketing campaign get torched in real time. But you could feel it. The energy wasn't excitement, it was dread. Everyone was just waiting to see how hard this thing was gonna flop. But what people didn't know was just how messy things had gotten behind the scenes. While the public was busy tearing apart Rachel's interviews, things behind the curtain at Disney were unraveling faster than anyone realized. According to multiple insiders, the production was a logistical nightmare. The budget, bloated, the direction, constantly shifting, and the casting choices, controversial from the jump.
7 dwarves living in a cave. What the are you doing, man?
Peter Dinklage isn't feeling Disney's upcoming live-action remake of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs.
There's a lot of hypocrisy going on, I gotta say.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to.
But nothing stirred the pot more than the decision to ditch the 7 dwarfs for CGI magical creatures. Why? Well, it all started with Peter Dinklage. He publicly criticized the remake for being backwards and offensive to little people. Instead of handling it with care, Disney overcorrected fast. They scrapped the idea of casting real actors with dwarfism and replaced them with animated stand-ins that looked weird, to say the least. This move didn't solve the problem. It created a whole new one. Suddenly, real actors from the dwarf community were speaking out, saying they were the ones losing roles, that Dinklage's comments, while well-meaning, cost them one of the few chances to be represented on a major platform. And once images of the CGI creatures leaked online, the internet had a field day roasting them. It was like watching a studio try to dodge one controversy and trip headfirst into 5 more. On top of that, whispers of internal chaos started leaking. Budget overruns, creative disagreements, last-minute rewrites, executives allegedly panicking over how to fix a film that was quickly becoming unsalvageable. You could practically feel the tension bubbling over. And with all that behind-the-scenes turmoil, there was still one looming question. Would the movie actually deliver once it hit theaters? Spoiler alert, it didn't. After months of drama, controversy, and online chaos, Disney finally dropped the movie into theaters. And let's just say, it hit the ground with a thud. Despite all the marketing, the trailers, and the desperate attempt to rebrand the film as heartfelt and empowering, audiences just weren't showing up. The numbers came in, and they were brutal. Opening weekend, a disappointing $87 million globally, way below what Disney needed to break even. And with a production budget rumored to be around $242 million, that wasn't just bad, it was catastrophic. Theaters were half empty. Fan excitement had turned into eye rolls. And instead of little girls lining up in princess dresses, most families just stayed home. The few who did go see it left unimpressed. The tone felt off, the story barely resembled the original, and the CGI dwarves looked like something pulled from a forgotten video game. Critics didn't hold back either. Reviews called it lifeless, hollow, and missing the very magic that made the original special. Some said it felt more like a parody than a fairy tale. And the worst part? Rachel's performance, after everything, didn't even wow the crowd. It was fine, but not enough to save the ship. The project that was supposed to be Disney's next big win, its shiny, modern-day revival of the film that started it all, ended up being one of its most high-profile, public, and painful failures. A film with a legacy nearly a century old, reimagined with the full force of Disney's billion-dollar machine behind it, somehow crashed and burned in spectacular fashion. And while the studio scrambled to put on a brave face, rolling out press statements, pretending everything was going according to plan, and highlighting anything remotely positive, the internet had already made up its mind. The verdict was in, this wasn't just a misstep. This was a full-blown box office bomb. Memes flew, hashtags trended, People weren't just criticizing the movie, they were mocking it. The kind of mockery that sticks. The kind that buries a film's reputation before it even has a chance to find a second wind. It wasn't just a flop, it became the example people pointed to when talking about how to ruin a remake. But while the numbers were bad, the fallout for Rachel Zegler might have been even worse. Because box office losses, studios can bounce back from those. They've done it before. But a lead actress publicly alienating the fan base, mocking the original material, and then trying to backpedal in the spotlight, that leaves a mark. One that sticks in the minds of directors, producers, casting agents, all the people with the power to decide whether you get your next role. In a matter of months, Rachel went from rising star to walking controversy. And in Hollywood, that kind of reputation spreads faster than any trailer ever could. Now here's where things got really personal. Because while Disney was licking its wounds over the financial disaster, Rachel Zegler's career was quietly slipping into damage control mode of its own. It wasn't just the Snow White backlash haunting her. Out of nowhere, people started digging up old interviews, and surprise, she had complaints about West Side Story too. Yeah, the same movie that launched her career and put her on the map. Instead of being grateful for a Spielberg-led debut, she talked about how exhausting it was, how she didn't enjoy parts of the experience, and fans weren't impressed. Hollywood started paying attention, and not in a good way. Casting directors and producers were reportedly taking a second look, because no matter how talented you are, if your name starts trending more for controversy than for performance, that's a red flag. Studios don't want a PR nightmare attached to a $100 million gamble. They want stars who build buzz, not burn bridges. Even people who liked her voice or thought she had potential started admitting it. Rachel might be talented, but she's quickly becoming a liability. And with so many actors out there hungry for roles, ones who won't torch the press tour with every interview, it raises the question, why take the risk? One viral comment summed it up perfectly. She's not just playing Snow White, she's writing the textbook on how to ruin your own stardom. And it didn't stop there. Twitter threads, TikToks, Reddit posts, everyone had something to say. For a rising actress who was supposed to be Disney's next Golden Girl, Rachel Zegler had become the poster child for what not to do during a press tour. This wasn't just a PR hiccup, it was a full-blown career detour. Casting directors were taking notes, studio execs were whispering behind the scenes. Because if you can derail a $242 million project with just a few bad interviews and viral sound bites, what's stopping you from doing it again? The trust was broken. And in an industry that's always hunting for the next big thing, Rachel suddenly looked like a high-risk gamble wrapped in glitter. And just when it looked like the fallout had peaked, like the internet had finally had its say, things got even worse. Because when a movie flops this hard, it doesn't just fade quietly into the background. It becomes a symbol, a warning sign, a red flag for the entire industry. The kind of failure that keeps studio executives up at night. For Disney, a company that built its entire legacy on magic, princesses, and picture-perfect fairy tales, this wasn't just a bad movie. It was a gut punch, a public embarrassment. The moment the crown slipped off the kingdom's head. This was the studio that gave us Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, and the original Snow White that practically launched animation as an art form, and now they'd become the punchline in the very genre they helped create. Internally, things were tense. Rumors started swirling about layoffs, executive reshuffles, and a whole lineup of upcoming remakes being quietly put on ice. The message was loud and clear. Disney couldn't afford another disaster like Snow White. Not with shareholders watching, not with fans fed up, and definitely not with the internet ready to pounce at the first whiff of another misstep. Online, it was a circus. Memes mocking the film flooded every corner of social media. People compared it to cheap knockoffs, bargain bin streaming flicks, even fan edits that somehow looked better than the real deal. Every marketing attempt Disney pushed out felt like it was met with sarcastic quote tweets and clown emojis. And perhaps the most brutal part? The merchandise bombed too. You know it's bad when even the toys start collecting dust on clearance shelves. No one wanted the plush dwarfs. No one wanted the princess dolls. The brand that once sold magic in a box couldn't even give it away. Meanwhile, other studios were watching closely and learning. Everyone was suddenly rethinking their remake strategies, double-checking their casting decisions, and praying their leads wouldn't go rogue on press tours. No one wanted to be the next cautionary tale. But Disney? They were stuck with the bill and a bruised reputation. And as for Rachel, the damage was done. But her story wasn't quite over just yet. So what was supposed to be a magical revival of a timeless classic ended up as one of the most painful flops in Disney history. No glass slipper, no fairy godmother, just a wrecked carriage, a burned reputation, and a studio scrambling to figure out where it all went wrong. The lesson here? It's simple. If you're going to reboot something beloved, respect the source. Don't alienate the fans. Don't mock the story. And for the love of all things animated, don't put someone front and center who acts like they'd rather be anywhere else. Rachel Zegler may still have talent. She may still have opportunities ahead. But the fallout from Snow White proved that even the brightest rising stars can burn out fast if they don't understand the responsibility that comes with the spotlight. And Disney, they learned the hard way that controversy doesn't always equal cash. Sometimes it just means your billion-dollar brand ends up as a cautionary tale. So maybe this wasn't a fairy tale at all. Maybe it was a reminder that in Hollywood, the real magic isn't just in the story. It's in how you tell it and who you trust to carry it. Because in the end, not every princess gets a happy ending. And this one? She might be stuck flipping through career advice books for a long, long time.